Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the CRKT or Columbia River Knife and Tool M40-03. Really cool looking knife from CRKT. I have a lot to say about this. I've been messing around with this for a while. I have definitely gathered my thoughts and I will share it with you. This knife will be listed right down in the description, and I will also list CRKT knives in general if you want to check them out. Thanks so much to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some cool stickers and other benefits, there's of course a link right down in the description. Your support would mean the world to me, and please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. All right, let's go ahead and get a measurement here. The CRKT M40, we're just going to call it the M40 for right now, coming in at about 8 inches overall. So this is a full-size knife. Blade length, we're coming in at just a hair shy, maybe right at 3.5, maybe a hair shy, right? 3.5 inches. Cutting edge is coming in just a little bit more, maybe 3.3 inches. Yeah. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall, so you can see here that this is definitely a full-size knife. Not quite as big as the Rat 1. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in also a little bit longer at about 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. Let's get them lined up correctly. Yeah, so there you go. It's exactly the same length overall as the Ritter Hogue. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches overall. And last but not least, the Benchmade Mini Bug Out. The Mini Bug Out coming in at 6.75 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? This knife is utilizing the new deadbolt lock, which honestly I really think is cool. This is interesting. It's this is their step into the fidget factor thing, but at the same time, the way that this is made, it's very strong. You'll find arguments on the internet here and there of people asking the question, is this as strong as the Triad Lock? Is it stronger? It's incredibly strong. Whether or not it is stronger than the Triad Lock, I think is trivial, because the amount of strength that the amount of durability that this and the Triad Lock bring to the table are completely and totally in excess. Right? They appeal to people who just like the excess strength that comes along with a super lock on a folding knife. And you know what? I get it too. I don't think anybody needs it. Honestly, if we're getting that rough with our tools, perhaps a fixed blade or something more appropriate like a pry bar is more important, right? More, you know, appropriate, like I just said. But the fact remains is that this has been demonstrated to be an incredibly durable style of lock. Also functions a lot like a button lock and is positioned around the pivot, which is cool. The flipping action in this guy is good from here. The flipper tab, it's got the appropriate amount of jimping on it, right? It's not aggressive. It's knocked down, right? Sticks out quite a bit, but the detent strength is good, and it flips hard. It's also important to point out that it's actually adjustable. That's what this little hole is here for. Now, you might be wondering, why does it look like it's raised? I think me and the last person that had it probably both made the same mistake of attempting to get this screw out. It's actually lipped under this bolster, and so the aluminum conformed around. Don't do that. If you buy this knife, don't try to pull that screw out, because you're going to end up raising the aluminum around it. You can adjust the detent on this guy and make it as light or as heavy as you want to, which is great. That's cool, and it works pretty well, right? The problem is no matter how much you adjust it or the pivot, on the way back down, you're just not going to get the... What I want is to push this button and have the blade fall. If that were the case, oh God, that would be excellent. Now, taking this pivot out, right, you know, unscrewing it has no effect on the action whatsoever. I suppose you might be able to get in there, maybe clean it out, maybe adjust it and get the action a little bit better. I've found that with most CRKT knives and even other button locks that I've handled, right, or other deadbolt locks, that's what this is, you're just not going to get that. That's what we want to see. It's not enough that, I mean, it's cool that it is really strong. It's cool that you can push that button, and truthfully, I can swing this hard enough to get it to close, but it's not like, you know, like my Para 3 where I just push that button and it wants to, well, this one's not a really, that's not a great example. Do I have an example of a knife that does something similar? I wonder if my Shaman is doing it right now. How about the axis lock with this guy? All right, here's my Benchmade Crooked River. You pull that, oh, that's nice, right? We like, that's fidget factor combined with a minimal effort, right? So it's just a little bit of excess convenience. I can see myself, you know, going to use this knife, right? Flipping it out and going, yeah, great. And then when it's time to get it back in, I kind of do this, and then I, you know, still have to mess with it to get it back down before I put it in my pocket. It'd be really nice if I could just push that button and just lightly swing it into place every time. That'd be really cool. That'd go a long ways. And it's not too much to ask considering what this knife costs, and that the fact that we're actually getting that with other, you know, both US made and foreign made knives that cost the same or less money. This is running on bearings. As far as I know, it's running on bearings. And I don't think that it should be that much to ask to get this knife to do that. And they don't seem to be there yet, right? This is a well-made item. We're going to talk about it. But the flipping action is great, but this really needs to be like, it doesn't have to be completely and totally glassy fall shut, but gravity should allow this to fall after you've depressed that button. You know, it just, I don't understand why it isn't. That would have gone a long ways. It's kind of frustrating. But will this knife deploy readily? Yeah, you can tune it exactly to the point where breaking the detent is exactly to your preference, and it looks like it'll stay that way once you get it set. So, okay. It is what it is. I'm going to move my mat back up here because I move it a lot. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. Get out my tools here. I do have inexpensive options. These two here are very recommendable and very inexpensive. And then I have more expensive options. They're all listed down below. The pivot is going to be a T8. I know that because I tried to adjust it earlier. So right here, right in the middle of the button lock. Yeah, T8. So underneath this is a coil spring that's wider at the top and sort of tapers, almost looks like a tornado, right? And that connects with the pivot, the screw part, and then the widest part of the spring contacts the head, and that's how you get that springiness in there. Okay, T8 right there, and then these screws here, this screw on the overlay, and I'm going to guess the screws underneath are going to be T6. It's not a deal breaker, but there are a lot of screws to hold in both the aluminum bolster and this material right here, which we're going to talk about. 1, 2, probably 2 more. This one actually is holding in the both the overlay and the filler tab, right? So there's 4 plus probably 4 more, and then these 2. There's a lot of screws, a lot. The look is, I like the look. It's just a ton of hardware, right? It's not a deal breaker, but if you're going to take this thing apart, man, you're going to have a lot of stuff to deal with. So have a place to put everything. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's pretty thick, especially, you know, the lip here of the deadbolt lock sticking out. Yeah, it's a pretty thick boy for sure. Not insane, it's not Medford thick. It's really not going to cause a problem for people carrying full-size knives, right? But for some people, that's just going to be too thick. Length and height up against 2 knives that have awkward carry profiles that nobody ever complains about, PM2 and Para 3. So in terms of height, you know, the flipper tab is going to create the tallest point. It's still not quite as tall as the PM2, so I wouldn't say that it's really that big of a deal. Lengthwise, longer than the Para 3, shorter than the PM2. It's really going to be thickness and weight that are going to bother people. On the inside of this, we'll get my flashlight and show you guys. There's a little bit of milling in there on these steel liners, so that's nice they did that. I think it definitely needs it because it's still not an ultra lightweight knife by any stretch of the imagination. Can you stand? Okay, we're standing. Let's go ahead and do, gosh darn it, the blade stock thickness here. 133 thousandths, go at 130 thousandths. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 at 140 thousandths. Yeah, it's a little bit thinner than the PM2 blade, so 130 to 135 thousandths, which is fine. Let's go ahead and weigh it. So what are we looking at for materials? We're looking at stainless steel on the liners, which if I can find my magnets, yeah. And then the bolster is actually aluminum. And I like the bolster look, it's cool. This looks like carbon fiber, it isn't. This is some type of injection mold plastic that has a pattern milled into it that looks like carbon fiber. I would rather that it just be G10. It would be cool if it was actual carbon fiber, but I know that that would make it cost a little bit more money. The pattern kind of looks neat, right? I guess it doesn't really bother me that much, right? Because it's not acting as the frame. Like, I hate this material on the Benchmade bug out. I hate it because it makes that knife feel so cheap. I don't care how strong it is. I just hate how cheap it feels. Because this is laying on top of a stainless steel liner, it's also combined with an aluminum bolster and has this pattern laid onto it, it actually looks pretty nice. And I don't feel the cheapness in it, right? It just feels about the same as G10 or maybe textured carbon fiber, and it looks okay. I'd rather it just be G10. And then if that pattern they want to mill that pattern into it, then great. If not, then it can just be G10, right? But it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. But I do like the aluminum bolster look. I think that looks really, really good. But anyways, we're talking about weight. We've got this and the aluminum, right? Decent thickness of blade, not crazy thick. We didn't already weigh it. I got sidetracked, started to talk about that material. We'll talk about that more in the anatomy. So the weight of this guy, that's not bad, really. 4.2 ounces. I'll remind everybody that the knife that I said most closely compares to it as far as the ones that I, use as size comparisons, the Ritter Hogue, is the exact same length of knife and comes in heavier at 4.52 ounces. So it's really not that big of a deal. I thought it was going to be heavier than that. Feels that way, but no big deal. Why did I need wrist there? I'm just preparing to use wrist because of how it feels on the way back down. You don't need wrist if the D10 is tuned properly. Let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy of this. So this knife is obviously, in the same family as, well, seems to be in the same family as the M16 and M21, two of the most popular models through CRKT. But I like how this looks way more. Way more. I do not like the holes in the handle, right? This is nice. This is a nice profile, and how they've shadow boxed the scales and the bolster here, and at the same time the knurling that's on the button, and then how they've done the this sort of pivot collar on the outside. It's just decorative, but gosh, it looks nice. This is a nice looking knife. I so desperately wanted for it to fall, right? There are some other things I'm going to complain about that I probably would have overlooked a little bit more if that had fallen shut, right? But it doesn't. Like I said, this raised area right here, right? That's the product of trying to get that screw out when it's obviously not meant to come out. So don't do that. It's normally flat. This area right here, this seam is done intentionally to have this little dip right here, so it might look like a gap to some people. No, it's machined that way on purpose. It sort of bevels, each side bevels into the other side, so it's on purpose. And this is really nice. These pieces fit together well. Like I said, this material is just some sort of injection mold plastic. I kind of like the pattern on it, and they've got some lines milled into it. It's nice. I just would have preferred that it was G10. All these areas around here are nicely knocked down. Truthfully, if there are hot spots, it's just really on the inside of the liners right here. This area, it's shadow boxed and it sticks up just a little bit. I think this could have been remedied by knocking this down a little bit, but it's really, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. There's really no spot on the handle that I would say is like, oh, ow, right? If you're really going to be bearing down on it, then you'd be wearing gloves. Honestly, ergonomic lines are okay. This area right here, it just doesn't make much sense to me, because why isn't it an actual, choil for your index finger? Why isn't it an area that's carved out to accept your index finger? Like, whose finger is supposed to fit right there? Make this a normal, right? Am I supposed to hold it like this? That doesn't make sense. I want to hold it like this. So I'm coming down on this point. This is the one spot where it's like, why? Make this, make it a choil. Make it an area where your finger's obviously supposed to go, right? Right here. It's big enough to accept a normal human finger. This, I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me. And I don't want to hold it like this. Way too far away. You're already a ways from the cutting edge right here, right? So, yeah. But anyways, yeah, nothing is crazy sharp other than that area right there, right? So it certainly looks nice. Jimping back here, which kind of weird. Honestly, if there's going to be jimping, why didn't you run it out on the blade? Because this is where you're going to be bearing down on it, right? And they've got a flat area. I'm just not, it doesn't make sense to me. Much like the M16, the thumb studs, which obviously these are meant to nest right here, right? But you can leave an area for these to contact the liner and at the same time make this whole area, you know, much more comfortable for the human index finger, right? So that's why they're shaped like that, I guess. I hadn't realized that. It still is not, it's not justified. This area needs to be more accepting to the human index finger. But anyways, they act as external stops, and I like that. That's nice. They're also knurled. You can use these as studs. It's not the most comfortable thing in the whole world. The reverse flick, it's not going to happen. That's fine. It flips well enough. It doesn't need to do that. No blade play, so they are nice and functional. This has the CRKT bead blasting on it. And honestly, I like how the blade looks. This is like a spear point style blade. Nice big swedge, flat that runs out. You know, it's in the middle. It's meant to emphasize strength and puncturing. Not a lot of room to drop down towards the edge, but truthfully, I believe this is hollow ground. Is it, or am I being deceived by something? Gosh, it feels like a slight hollow grind. Yeah, it does get okay thin behind the edge. The CRKT edges have never been incredibly impressive. This blade is going to cut. It looks good enough, right? It's the bevel from the factory is a little bit wonky, right? On this side it's okay, but on this side it's, you know, it's like thinner down here and thicker up here. Okay, you know, it bothers me, but it's not the worst thing in the world. They use this, I don't know if it's like a coating or if it's bead blasting. It's something that I always see on CRKT knives, and it kind of looks nice. I don't know. I don't know exactly how well it's going to be at resisting corrosions or anything like that, but it does create a nice slick surface so it can pass through material readily. We've got M40-03, and then the patent number, Carson design. Doesn't need the patent number, doesn't need the, you know, it shows the IKBS, so there's your confirmation that it's bearing. Sorry, I just bumped the camera, right? Big unnecessary paragraph, basically. The CRKT on the front is okay. Honestly, I would have been just fine with Carson design on the other side. Here's my biggest issue with the blade. It's using that 1.4116 steel. Is that the... There's so many 1 point something or other steels. As far as Z knives goes, or the application you can get on your phone, knife steel composition. This steel is apparently roughly the equivalent of 440A, and is generally much softer than the steel that the heat. Now, optimal heat treat on this steel, I have no idea what it is. What I'm reading is that the steel is typically hardened between 54 and 56, right? Let's say it's harder than that, right? Still, 440A, no. If the composition and the end, you know, basically the performance of the steel is in any way similar to that steel, no. I have not heard many good things about this steel. It was on another deadbolt CRKT that I reviewed, and I have no idea why they're trying to push this steel in this price range. This should be, at the very least, be D2, but honestly, for this price, if they had put 154 CM on it, I would have been much happier. There are plenty of US manufacturers, right? Kershaw, right? Let's say even I know people, it's not 100% made in the United. Maybe it's part. I don't know that for sure. I'm not making any claims, right? Even if it's not 100% made in the United States, right? If most of the knife is made in the United States, or however you want to say that, they're using 154 CM on knives that cost $100. There are companies out there. I mean, Kershaw, for example, has had a few knives in 20 CV that cost 100 or less. Why are we using this? This makes no sense, right? I mean, a lot of people make an argument, well, it's, you know, really tough steel. It may not hold an edge very long, but it's stainless and it's easy to sharpen. There's a bajillion steels that there's so many better steels that are more balanced that could be used in this price range. So many better, more modern steels. They don't necessarily have to be powder formed, right? D2, probably going to be harder to sharpen, much tougher, right? This is a knife that I want to take out and use. I don't want to have to worry about, well, I cut through 3 or 4 boxes. It's time to sharpen it up, right? What I'm saying is that in this day and age, right, while this is definitely steel and can be sharpened and it will work for a while and is probably plenty stainless, right? It's for what I'm gonna pay for this knife in 2020. I'm gonna want a better steel by quite a bit. Sounds like I'm being really harsh, but I feel like they got plenty of feedback with that other oversized deadbolt. It was one of the first ones that we all saw. There were a lot of people going, what the heck are you guys thinking with the steel, right? I'm being really harsh here, and I'm sorry about that, but it's like, what are we doing with this steel? I mean, like CRKT obviously does make some excellent knives. They are definitely capable of some excellent machine work like we saw in the Huron. They're also capable of using steels that those of us in the, the knife enthusiast world expect to see in certain different price points, right? We've seen them use M390 or 20CV on different occasions. If you're going to make a knife around the $100 mark, $120 mark, wherever this is at, it's right about there, you got to get rid of this steel. There's going to be too many of us and too many people, not just people who have YouTube channels, but people who talk on forums, people who are interested in buying knives. Too many people are aware that this is not a steel that it feels appropriate in this price range. Again, I think I'm being harsh because I really like how this looks and I love the idea of the deadbolt. I want this thing to be good, and it is frustrating. The steel that I'm reading that they're using on this is frustrating. I think even the M16 uses AUS 8. I'd prefer AUS 8. From what I understand about this steel, I'd take AUS 8 over that steel. Even though I think AUS 8 actually, if I'm remembering correctly, is also somewhat similar to 440A, or it's similar to one of the 440s, maybe 440C, right? It's not all of those steels are steels that most people consider to be not, we're done with those steels, right? On a sub $50 knife, on a sub $30 knife, people are like, all right, it's a 440C, it's AUS 8, whatever, right? On a $100 to $120 knife, no. We need a different steel in this thing. All right, man, that was a long rant. Are we at 21 minutes? Holy cow. Sorry about that, guys. Anyways, I do like how the blade looks, right? This is an unquestionably durable locking system. It can make up for part of the fact that this steel is not great by any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to point out this locking system is incredibly durable. The amount of what you'd have to do to get this to fail is much like the triad lock. The whole rest of the knife would just be disintegrated before this lock would fail. So that's really nice, and it absolutely is solid. I mean, this is completely and totally solid. I think this is cool, right? Very cool. A couple of standoffs back here. Pocket clip is all right. Definitely carries deep. Screw isn't recessed, but it's okay. It's got a rising bill, so it's going to accept most thicknesses of pocket seam, right? And in and out of the pocket, it's very easy. The blade is centered. I don't have an issue with that. And, like I said, locks up completely. So again, my nitpicks here. This material, I don't know. For the price, and I'll say this about the same thing about the bug out that's using the plastic stuff, the Grivery, the FRN, whatever you want to call it, injection mold plastic. Rather it just be G10. It shouldn't cost them that much more. The flipping action is good. On the way back down, honestly, I'd like to see it at least go, right? I'd like to see that. It'd be nice. It's running on bearings, right? Other companies are doing it. They should be able to do it too. The steel sucks. This is roughly a $110 knife, something like that. The steel sucks. Honestly, if the steel were something better, like if they had used even D2 on this, right? More appropriately, something that I think we'd like to see more something that we expect in this price range, around 154 cm. I probably could have partially overlooked this, and maybe that would have got to the point where I was like, this is somewhat recommendable. But the fact that it's the combination of this stuff, the action. This thing is begging to be smoother, right? That's what we want in a fidget factor knife in this price range, right? Or a lock that is clearly designed to cater towards people who appreciate fidget factor, right? It's using bearings. They're making an attempt here. They're making an obvious attempt to aim towards that crowd, right? It's got to be doing that. This is too tight, and maybe you could get in there and adjust it, right? But it should be that way from the factory. And then the steel's got to go. It's those three things, right? I really want to like this knife, and that's why it's so frustrating. Guys, a somewhat negative review on this channel is pretty rare, but I'm always honest. I only look at things that I think I'm going to like, and that's based on, I'll look at the materials, sometimes I'll glance at it, look at the company who makes it, their reputation, right? profile, how it looks. That has a big, big to do with whether or not I want to look at it. So I looked at this and I thought, CRKT, it's got the deadbolt lock, right? I like a lot of CRKT knives. I think they're cool. I like the deadbolt lock, and I love this whole kind of, in the same family as the M16 thing, right? Because there's a lot that I wanted the M16 to be that it wasn't. This is kind of a sidestep from the M16 in 2020, right? The M16 might have been a much more popular knife, much more appropriate knife for its price range a while back, but it doesn't hold a candle to a lot of knives today. And this, I wanted it to be like, oh, this is like the modern version, right? And it's going to have all these cool, it's going to be like fall shut and have better materials. Now it just feels like a sidestep, especially at that price. Sorry, this isn't a knife that I can recommend in its current form. I think for the amount of money that you're going to pay, no matter who you are, I think that there are better options out there by quite a bit, and that's too bad. I really liked this. I mean, I wanted to like it. I loved, really, truthfully love how it looked. Especially this area right here is beautiful. How they did that button, right? And the fit and finish on this is good, right? Like I said, I mean, this thing centers up. Nice. I might have been flipping it a little bit. I might need to tighten that pivot just a little bit, but it was centered when I got it. Lines, everything meets up. Also, this area right here makes no sense. What the heck, right? So far away from the cutting edge as well. Where you're going to have to hold it comfortably. Here's how far away you are from the cutting edge. It's just crazy, right? Flipper tab could have been, probably could have been higher, right? Up here. I mean, it'd be way down here. Maybe just angled differently, lower and angled differently. I don't know, or sort of, have a circle carved out of it so that it's more accepting to the human hand. Maybe you could get closer. I don't know, right? Or make this area into a choil. I don't know. Sharpen it, bring the edge down further, even though it would run into this, external stop. This is a perfect example of me complaining about something and not offering a solution to fix it. I probably could choke all of that down if the steel was better, if this was G10, and if it had more of a, just more of a dress. It doesn't have to be perfect, just better than this, Boy, that was harsh. Sorry, it's harsh. It's frustrating when you really want something to be good and it isn't. Okay, 27 minutes. That was long enough. Like I said, if you decide, screw you, Complex, I'm going to pick it up anyway. All right, well, there's links right down there in the description if you want to pick this up. I do urge you to check out other things that CRKT has because they do make some good knives. Not coming down on CRKT at all. They do have some other good knives. This one wasn't for me. Not something I can recommend. In any case, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.